Everybody, I'm Tara Thomas. Always a pleasure to be with the KBBG listening audience. I am the Director of Communications, School and Community Relations, specifically for the Waterloo Schools, formerly with KWWL. So glad now to be a part of this school district and that I get to share with you, the listeners, a lot of the great things we have going on in Waterloo Schools. And joining me is a man who needs no introduction, a familiar voice to many of you. It's Superintendent Dr. Gary Norris.
Good morning, Tara. I'm going to be excited today to see if you can work without a teleprompter.
I know, this is uncharted territory for me, so fortunately we have some time here to really impart a lot of what we've got going on, specifically with this high school task force and the future of Waterloo High Schools, the 21st century high school, how that's going to take shape. So it's fun that we won't have to go to commercial. We have 30 minutes to chat. So just tell us, Dr. Norris, how this took shape. How did the task force come to be?
Well, and we've talked about it a little to the listeners when we were out visiting some of the high schools about a year ago or less, and we talked about what some of the things we observed. But yes, let's go back to the beginning. When I arrived here 5 years ago, we began thinking about our high schools as smaller learning communities. The school district already had a grant called the SLC, or Small Learning Community Grant. And we, over that period of time, we broke our schools, our large high schools, into four smaller learning communities. And we also put a career emphasis on each of the learning communities. So the notion then was to start our young people thinking about school as just a natural step into the real world. A lot of schools, and thank goodness we headed this direction, but a lot of schools, the young people kind of have their feeling towards school is a little ambivalent. They just don't get why they're there every day. And so I think our teachers have done a great job in our career interests academies. And again, we're not training kids for specific jobs, but we're beginning to talk to them about how the jobs situation in America looks. And so we divided into an arts, communication, and business academy, and an engineering, technology, and manufacturing academy, a health services academy, and a human services academy. And the idea there was for teachers to, while they were teaching math, while they were teaching English, the idea was that they also began to bring careers into the discussion.
When we talk about this task force, I think it's important to note that when you brought all these individuals together to then look toward the future and how we can build on things like these career interest academies, talk about who makes up that task force. It's not just district administrators telling others what they think should happen.
Well, one of the things we noticed also, you're absolutely right, but one of the things we noticed is we can't replicate Delaware's high schools and make Waterloo High Schools Delaware's high school, or some of the schools we saw in Texas, or some of the schools we saw in South Dakota. And so we made up a community task force of citizens, of teachers, of some high school students, some pastors, some business leaders, some people that work in some of our largest manufacturers in town. So this was a community task force, and there were about 52 to 54 people, and they literally visited high schools in probably about 20 different high schools across the country.
And what did they find out? What have we brought back that we're now saying, here's the information, what can we do with it, how do we take the next step?
Well, the first thing that needs to be said is the committee in their recommendations clearly concluded that the Waterloo schools, by what we've done already with our career interest academies, are doing a great job with many of our children. And of course, that leaves, well, what's happening with the rest of our children? And what the committee saw was that there was a significantly higher level of engagement with students in some of the schools that we witnessed. And so the goal here is to take, we're already doing a good job with a number of our students, but of the students that have become kind of disengaged or disenfranchised with high schools today and how we operate, the observation was there's a better way. And essentially that better way was career related, and it had to do with what many of our listeners would remember back from the 60s and 70s would be vocational education. Now, we don't use the word vocational education anymore because, frankly, careers are so different out there. Even your foray into broadcasting, as you've seen things switch over from analog to digital, it takes a whole different mindset to work in that industry now. And what we're finding is that the vocational jobs of yesteryear have morphed into highly technical, skilled jobs that we need to get our students ready for.
And I think it's interesting to note that this is not us going out per se and saying, okay, here's what's working in other high schools, this is how we might be able to transform our community high schools. It's also turning to local employers and saying, there's a gap, and we want to help bridge that gap so we can plug some of these Waterloo kids into jobs that perhaps they might be looking outside of our area to fill.
You're right, the Greater Cedar Valley Alliance, which is our economic development and chamber arm, the Greater Cedar Valley Alliance has noticed that there are a number of areas, and they do this after consultation with the businesses, but they've noticed there's a number of areas that students from our area, and I might say American high school students in general, are not prepared for some of these more technical jobs. And as you know, we've already ramped up STEM education in the Waterloo schools. That stands for science, technology, engineering, and math. And so this is the logical next step to begin exploring, if you will, highly technical careers with young people.
And when you look at how these academies are going to take shape, is it a matter of building on some of the things that are already in place, or do we scratch everything and start over? I mean, how do we look at where this goes from here?
That's a great question. That central question is probably first and foremost in all of our teachers' minds, because they're wondering, well, what in the heck is Norris really proposing here? Well, the fact is, Tara, so much of our school system is required by other agencies, so many of the courses. So for instance, we're always going to have algebra, we're always going to have English, we're always going to have physical education. And all of the regular courses that I would call core courses, science, math, those are always going to be a part of a 21st century high school education. But now we're going to take the business courses we've already got, and we're going to make sure that they are teaching the skills needed in a 21st century business application. And for the most part they are, but they need to be strengthened and embellished. Now, something we are not doing a lot of, for instance, in the Waterloo schools would be partnering, and we're going to, but partnering with Hawkeye Community College and funneling young people directly into health professions and things like that. The issue that we've been missing is at the juniors and senior students have always been able to go to Hawkeye and begin to start in a nursing program or in some other health field. But what we haven't done is we haven't, in freshman and sophomore years, we haven't got students real excited about doing that. And so that opportunity is sometimes missed. You know, what a lot of families don't know is that you can go to Hawkeye sometime during your junior and senior year, and the school district will essentially pay for your part of your college education. Well, the state of Iowa and the school district. And so we're just going to highlight opportunities like that. But several programs we don't have now, and we'll have to open up.
Sure. If you're just joining us, this is Tara Thomas with Waterloo Schools. We are joined, our guest today is Dr. Gary Norris, the superintendent, the man who is helping with the community's input, help to shape the future of how our children, our grandchildren will be educated in Waterloo high schools. And I think that's something that we need to touch on, is change can be tough in that a lot of folks don't want to feel, as you've alluded to, that what we're doing isn't working. How are you remedying that with people who might say, hey, you can't just, flip everything upside down and expect people to jump on board 100%?
Good question. The first thing we want to do is bring honor and dignify the hard work of our present faculty, that they are performing in a system, and I don't mean the Waterloo system, I mean the American education system. They're performing in a system that they were trained, their skills were trained at universities. They have been doing exactly what they've been told to do. But it's generally regarded true around the United States that schools have not changed quick enough, and so we're trying to hurry the pace and say, hey, you've done a great job, you're doing a great job now, but we need to hurry up some of these changes. And then for the other audience, our external audience, all of our parents, all of our business people, all of our grandparents out there, we want to acquaint them with different and new methods that we might be using, realizing, again, we're still going to do algebra, we're still going to have English, we're still going to have biology and all of those, but maybe with a more hands-on approach. All of us remember, I would ask all of our listening audience to remember a time when you were enjoying part of your schooling the most. So, just everybody for a minute with me, think out there. What were some of the times when you were learning at your greatest, when you were really engaged? Most people will say, Tara, it's not a time when they were being lectured to. Rather, it was a time, if it was chemistry, when we moved from the front of the room to the back of the room and started doing chemistry lab. And most people would say, well, when I was in math class, even though they were a little challenging, rather than just doing all of the problems for next week, I liked having to figure out the word problems because they meant something. And so people won't have a big stretch coming to these meetings to find out how we're thinking about making things more relevant.
So it's really just that hands-on approach that we all can anecdotally reflect on as one that has worked to keep us engaged. And as you said, that's the key here. Let's get everybody engaged.
It is. And so it answers the questions that we all asked when we were young people. When we went home at 4 o'clock in the afternoon and our parents said to us, how was the day, Tara? And you responded, nah, I don't. And then they said, well, what did you do? Nah, yeah. And what we want to have that response is, Mom, today I built a rocket because we were studying propulsion systems and we were studying how rockets or how fuel works, or we're wanting to have the similar learnings but just have it in something that can be explained as a real world situation.
Wonderful. Well, you're listening to the Waterloo School Superintendent, Dr. Gary Norris. My guest today, right here on KBBG, will be right back after this. We are back. This is Tara Thomas, the School Community Relations Director, School and Community Relations Director for the Waterloo Schools. I'm still getting the title down. 2 months into the job, having left behind the world of television news, it's fun that now I still have this opportunity to engage in a broadcasting setting through KBBG. And my guest this morning, Dr. Gary Norris, somebody that many of you know, a long time now, superintendent, 5 years now.
This is my sixth
year with Waterloo Schools. And he wants you to be involved and engaged in the process to flesh out how this 21st century high schools will take shape in Waterloo. So how can you, the listener, be involved? This is where Dr. Norris can bring you to the table, explain how we're going to include the community in this process.
Well, the thing we're not going to do is, you said it earlier, Tara, we're not going to cram something down people's throats and say, well, this is Gary Norris's great idea, and so let's change. What we want to do is create an awareness here in Waterloo so that no matter who is superintendent, no matter who is principal of the high school, the community has high expectations on the type of education they want our students to receive. And the way to do that is to go out and talk and listen to people at our town hall meetings and receive input and feedback and see what touches people's buttons, what are the things most important to people. And so we've already, and we're willing to schedule more, we've probably already got 15 to 18 community meetings set up in the months of October and November. And we're willing to do more if there remains interest. But they'll be at churches, they'll be at community locations, they'll even be in a few schools. And the evening will be structured like this. There'll be a brief explanation and some pictures of what we saw and what the high school task force has been up to. Some of the community members that joined me and these joined our staff, I didn't go to all of them, joined our staff in many of the visits, will be there to talk about what they saw. So there'll be some pictures, some discussions, and then we're going to open it up and say, hey, does this make sense? There'll be some business representatives there saying what they're needing more of in schools. And so it's going to be, I would think anyone that would come would go away refreshed that at least they're talking about how do we improve our community, how do we improve our high schools, how do we improve our local businesses.
And we're talking about these town halls that you all are invited to attend. We should mention the first one out of the gate is October 16th, so coming up on Wednesday at 7. It's at Payne AME Fellowship Hall, one of many meetings that will be taking place from now through all the way into the beginning of December. And you can always check out waterlooschools.org. There's an icon there that says Town Hall Meetings. You just click on that, up comes the list, and we hope that you can stop by one of these meetings and tell your friends and neighbors. Myself and some other district administrators and the like will be attending these as well. We'd love to talk with you in person, and I'm really excited, some free snacks will be available at these meetings too. So you can get some refreshments and check out all that Dr. Norris has to say with this visual presentation, but beyond that, offer your input, give us your feedback and your opinions about how you would like your children and your families to be educated in the future of the Waterloo Community School District. Okay, let's talk about the big, I guess, elephant in the room is how do you pay for all of this? When anybody wants to change something, start something anew, the big question is, okay, well, who's going to fund it and how is this going? How will the bill be paid?
Great question. The answer is we have to know what it is we want to do before we can assign the cost to it. Many, like I said, many of our high school programs that currently exist will need to exist. We're not going to, let's say we have 12 algebra teachers in the district now, maybe 5 at East and 6 at West and maybe 1 at Expo. And those are just approximate numbers, but we're still going to need algebra teachers. So we're not going to have to fundamentally change much of our teaching workforce, but there's a lot of duplication when you run 2 almost identical high schools, and the third being Expo, which is an alternative high school. So we duplicate a lot of programs at East and West. So once we determine the vision for what programs we need to offer at Waterloo, then for those programs that are being duplicated, we'll be able to move some of those programs toward this new direction. There probably will need at some point, because of the age of our high schools, there'll need to be some facilities modifications. But some of them aren't as bad as you might expect. If it's a business course, most of those are taught in front of computers, and we already have computer labs in our buildings. On the other hand, if we're teaching a medical lab and we're having some patient simulators where kids come in and see how real life people function when they're ill, then we'll probably need to partner with some institutions for obtaining some of the equipment we need. And our high schools, frankly, have needed updating for some time. So we want to make sure when we're updating our high schools, we do it in a manner that will serve us for the next 50 years.
Now you talk about partnering with Hawkeye. UNI Wartburg, why is it critical for high schools these days to look toward these partnerships with institutions of higher learning as somewhat of a really not just financial but educational necessity?
For whatever reason, we've developed the attitude that, at least in many of our families, we've developed the attitude that education comes in stages and that each graduation is a big deal. Now, I don't want to take away from that. Yes, congratulations, you just earned your high school diploma, but that's the good news. The bad news is that high school diploma won't do for you what you need to do with it for the long haul, and so you need more training. So the more we can partner with our post-secondary institutions, young people will just naturally expect that they're going on to something else. So we want to turn the junior and senior year kind of into a never-never land where you're halfway still in high school and halfway heading into college, and educators refer to that as seamless pathways. There's just a pipeline from when you start school to when you actually take a job. And what many of these schools did that we witnessed is they even make a seamless transition into the workforce. So you start school when you're a baby and you end up this pipeline and you've got a great high-paying job. That's what we want for all Americans.
And what do we know about the characteristics that employers are looking for? What makes a good employee in 2013 and beyond?
Well, the Cedar Valley Alliance and Chamber developed a document that they've got on their website that talk about the skills that just our local area manufacturers and businesses say they need. And interestingly enough, strong work ethic jumps right out there at the top. Well, people might say, well, duh, of course we need strong work. But that is not, that's not something that routinely kids have embedded in them necessarily. Also, good oral and written communications, and of course that's some of the things we can do at school. And then the ability to think analytically and solve problems. That's probably the one biggest complaint we hear. And let's think about math as we were talking about it before. You don't learn to think analytically if all you do in math is solve 20 problems at the end of the chapter every night. But on the other hand, if you learn how to figure the height of the tree by using geometry, then you've picked up a real world skill. And so those are the types of things we're thinking about, thinking analytically. And then our businesses tell us you have to be able to work as a team member because businesses function as teams. Well, that means we have to end some of our rows and columns of seating kids in classrooms and treating them all as unique individuals, which we still have to do that, but they have to, we have to assign them to teams to work on projects, just like in the real world. And so those are some of the main ones: thinking critically, having a sense of inquiry, and strong technology skills also round out the important skills.
You're listening to Dr. Gary Norris, the Waterloo School Superintendent. He is our guest today. I'm Tara Thomas, also with Waterloo Schools, and I'd be remiss not to say that with this listening audience in particular, there has to be that concern, that focus for the African American student population and how this school district is going to serve the needs of obviously every student that comes through its doors, but specifically how can we tailor our future for success of all students across the board, including the black children that we want to go on to these same success stories that we're talking about.
Well, that is the key to this. We're creating a 21st century high school for all children. And we can no longer afford, as our national economy, to have some young people that are underemployed. And so we have to prepare everyone. And when we set out to find schools to go look at, if you will, we pick those schools that have similar demographics to Waterloo. Higher concentrations of minority students, also higher concentrations of folks that are at the poverty level. And we found highly engaged young people that were minority students. We found highly engaged young people whose families were not the wealthiest, and these young people were flourishing, Tara, in these schools that we saw. And so it was affirming to all of our community members that went with us to see just how great the young people were doing.
That's wonderful, and we've been talking about this 21st Century High School Task Force and the vision for how the Waterloo High Schools will take shape in the coming years. And that's where you come in. We want to remind you these town hall meetings begin October 16th all the way through early December. There is one in your neighborhood, I promise you. We have 15 to 20 already set up, and Dr. Norris would be welcome to take on more and to come and engage directly with you in whatever agency or group you're affiliated with, so you can be a part of the process, have a seat at the table. You can go to waterlooschools.org to find a list of all these 2 to 3 weekly meetings that begin, most of them at 7 in the evening, and refreshments also will be provided. Myself and a lot of other district employees will be attending as well to hear how this 21st Century High School could take shape with your input. So I guess, why would you encourage that grandmother or individual listening who's saying, you know what, I'm busy, we all have a lot going, so why should I take the time to show up at one of these meetings?
Well, we have to know as citizens. That's the foundation, the bedrock of our country, is a highly engaged citizenry. And so we need folks there to keep us grounded in the past, but we also need to educate everyone for what the workforce of the future looks like. Maybe someone has been retired for a while and has not been out in the workforce and has not seen the technology skills that our young people require today. And so I think that's the biggest reason, just educating ourselves on moving beyond that attitude, well, the old system was good enough for me. We're enlightened people. We all have to understand that our grandkids need a very different world than we needed.
Well, and I also just want to say, this is a great opportunity for so many people. With all the times these meetings are being offered, we just don't want you to hear about this after the fact and say, darn it, I wish I had been a part of the process. So shout it from the rooftops now is what we're trying to do as a district, to say, hey, starting next week, all the way through early December, a lot of meetings, lots of opportunities. We want you to have a seat at the table and be engaged in this process. And one more thing, we're about out of time.
Yeah.
But
and I was just going to say very quickly, and then after we receive all that feedback, we'll put some plans together and we'll come back at people one more time.
Absolutely. So he'll be back, I'll be back, we'll have a lot more to share with you, and we thank you so much for joining us. This is Tara Thomas with the Waterloo Community School District. Our guest today, Dr. Gary Norris, a man who wants you to be a part of shaping how our schools are going to look as we continue moving forward with the goal of success for all of the students that come through the Waterloo Schools doors. Have a great day.